It's Tuesday, September 24th, 2013. My name is Dale Tafoya. And first off, I'd like to congratulate the Oakland A's for clinching their 16th American League West title on Sunday. Watching the A's clinch a postseason spot is always exciting. And the ALDS starts on Friday, October 4th, and the A's opponent is going to be the Tigers. And you A's fans are the most radical, loudest, loyal fans in all of baseball in the postseason. And I'm sure you're going to electrify the Oakland Coliseum come October. By the way, this is another episode of Athletics Talk Now. We're a podcast and blog that celebrates the past and embraces the future of Oakland A's baseball. This is podcast number 119. And let's get right into the show. Andy Dolich is one of the most established sports executives in America. He was the president of business operations for the NBA's Memphis Grizzlies, chief operating officer of the San Francisco 49ers. And from 1980 to 1995, Andy was a sports executive for the Oakland A's. And when he arrived in 1980, he was charged with rejuvenating the sagging fan interest in the A's brand. And he did. When the Haas family bought the A's in 1980 for $12.4 million, the A's inherited about 500 season ticket holders from former owner Charlie Finley, who left the organization in shambles. Within 10 years, A's attendance soared to nearly 3 million in 1990, which ranked third in all of baseball. And during that time, the A's also set road attendance records, and Andy was at the forefront of it all. And I think his marketing ability compelled many of us to become A's fans. He's joining us on the show today. And Andy, I know you're a busy man these days. Thanks for taking the time to talk some A's history with us.
No, I always have time to talk about the A's, and the most positive part, Dale, is the A's are continuing to write history right here in Oakland. One point, it was actually 326 season tickets. You know, you have to remember those incredible records, which was probably the all-time low. Charlie Finley had given up on Oakland and given up on baseball, even though he was one of the greatest promoters in the game, but a self-promoter and a great baseball man, which gave people tremendous thrills. I appreciate the kind words, but the reason that we were so successful is so basic, and sometimes organizations forget about it. It's all about the team. And I don't just mean the team on the field, of which Oakland A's fans have seen great teams over many decades, but the team in the front office, the team in baseball operations, the team at the Coliseum. And what we had under the Haas ownership is we truly were, it sounds a bit trite, Dale, but we truly were a team in total partnership with the community. The city of Oakland, Alameda County, George Vukasin, who ran the Coliseum Commission, everybody was on the same page. And clearly today, people are not singing off the same hymn sheet.
Andy, let's talk about the condition of the A's organization in 1980. I've heard stories. I've talked to scouts and players from back then. They hardly had any scouts. They hardly had any forms to write on to complete contracts. And we've heard of the infamous crowd of 653 in 1979 at the Coliseum. They were on their way to Denver, some say. Describe the state of the franchise when the Haas ownership took over and you began doing your thing.
Well, it's funny, Dale, you know, that 653 people that were there, it's like Woodstock. There's now 700,000 people that were part of that crowd of 653, because everybody remembers that. They had a non-working radio network. I guess it's an oxymoron. It was like 60 yards of string and 4 juice cans, and it was a complete mess. It was a crater. And one of the great reasons for the A's early success with Billy Ball, which I'm sure we'll get into, which has nothing to do with Moneyball, was that Charlie Finley had basically just given up. He had given up on selling. He had given up on marketing. He was an absentee owner. And even with the great teams of the early 70s, it was over at that time. And they weren't even presenting themselves as a minor league team. My first vision, this is an absolutely true story, When I went into the Coliseum offices, there was an old steel case desk. It only had 3 legs. It was listing at a right angle, and there was a blotted piece of oak tag stuck in a rotary dial phone, and it said dial O for assistance. There was nobody in the office, in the outer office. I dialed O for assistance, and the phone rang and rang and rang.
Wow.
I tried the door. The door opened. I went in, and I had just gotten off the plane in San Francisco, drove to the office December 3rd, 1980, and there was Roy Eisenhart, Wally Haas, and a whole bunch of other people sitting in one office. And I noticed something that I had seen before, but it was kind of all, there were letters stuck in it and envelopes, and it was the 1973 World Series trophy being used as a file cabinet with letters in between the flags. So from then on, we basically hit the ground running. I think caught the Giants sleeping a little bit in terms of marketing north to Sacramento, south to Salinas, Monterey, and east to Vegas. We didn't just view it as Oakland. We said we're going to be a Northern California sports organization, and it played out pretty well for us for a number of years.
Yes, it did. And of course, many professional sports owners, Andy, want to make a profit, and there are factors that compel them to purchase a professional sports team. Yet, the late Walter A. Haas, has said time and time again in interviews during his tenure when he owned the A's that he bought the A's, and let me quote this, chiefly to keep the team in Oakland as an aid to the community. End of quote, Andy.
It is hard to believe in today's world where money is everything that an owner could say that. And let's not forget, this man was running the largest apparel company on the face of the globe with only a history of, 160 years that literally helped build our country. And I've worked for a number of different owners in a number of different sports and some great ones. But clearly Walter Haas and the family, Wally Haas, Evie, his wife, Roy Eisenhart, Betsy Eisenhart, they understand, in my view, as well as anybody that's ever been in sports, what it's all about. And that is a team is a community asset. And it is owned by those ticket holders. Now, financially and legally, it's owned by people that have deep pockets. But Walter Haas, if you look at the incredible work that the family has done at the University of California, Berkeley, at Chrissy Field, and so many other civic-minded philanthropies, and they never put themselves ahead of the entity. Never once did they put themselves. He was, an incredible man and the kind of person that you could sit with on a cross-country flight, talk about fly fishing, talk about philanthropy, talk about open land use, and get off the plane and somebody said, "Hey, do you know who you were sitting next to?" And said, "Yeah, Wally, just a really nice guy from San Francisco." You'd never know that he was the CEO of Levi Strauss.
The voice you're hearing is Andy Dolich, the creative marketing force behind the A's for 15 seasons. Let's talk about Billy Ball. Andy, coined after the late A's manager Billy Martin, who was a local guy born in Berkeley. As a kid, I remember how Billy Ball was marketed. The TV spots, the radio spots, the billboards. I remember Billy on a commercial saying, "Why is everybody picking on me?" What made Billy Ball, Andy, a part of A's history that we're still talking about today?
Yeah, pretty simple. Again, being in the right place at the right time and having the right people all working as a team. First and foremost, the late, great sports writer from the Oakland Tribune that went on to fame at Sports Illustrated, Ralph Wiley, wrote this column on Billy Ball. And when I came to the marketplace, I was looking for something a little bit different. You really couldn't talk about the record in those previous 5 years. You couldn't talk about the great players that were coming because nobody knew who was coming. But I said, Billy Ball, a different brand of baseball. We were lucky to have a partner in Hal Riney. And Hal Riney is one of the most brilliant advertising minds in the United States. He had an all-star team, Jeff Goodby, Rich Silverstein, who are still in the market today with their own agency. And together, we decided, and I got team buy-in. Let's try something a bit different. So it's not just some film of somebody hitting a home run or somebody sliding into second base and saying, "Hey, you should come see great baseball." And Billy is a great actor. Billy was a great actor, and we had so many good young players at that time, and Ricky and Dwayne Murphy and McCaddy and Mike Heath, and we basically just kind of tried to turn it on its ear, have some fun, and show people that this wasn't just baseball. I mean, there are baseball fans who are sabermetric nutcases and they know everything, but most people are coming to see the national pastime where you can do a lot of things and enjoy it. And that all came together, and, you talk about luck. We won our first 11 games, and I think we won 17 out of 18, and I still have a Time magazine cover. And who was on the front page but Billy Martin. So we went from who are they to national news, and that was the year, 1981, where Fernando Mania was all the rage in Southern California.
Sure.
Billy Ball had kind of caught fire here, and those became the two stories that Major League Baseball was really focused on early on. So right place, right time, and some decent people working on the project.
And it all happened at the Oakland Coliseum. And let's touch on our beloved Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Stadium, Andy. I still call it that today. It has become a target in national media circles because of the sewage problems. And writers would rather talk about the outdated stadium with sewage issues rather than the A's winning. But I remember back in the 80s and early 90s, Andy, just the vibe on those bleachers, the green ivy behind us, the midweek business person special. And even on a Tuesday night, the bleachers will be packed. What made the Coliseum such a nice place to see a game back then?
Well, let's just go back to last year. I happened to go to the Tiger games, and I would say that the environment at the O.co, right, the O.co, you and I are on the same, it's the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, or just the Coliseum, but the vibe there was as exciting, as great, as crazy, as involved as any I've ever seen in sport, and equaled, if it maybe wasn't even greater, than all of the great environments that we had. So that showed me that all this BS that Oakland can't succeed, the Coliseum is this, the Coliseum is that. Let's put aside for a second that the A's need a baseball-only park. No argument on that. But to say that the Coliseum is terrible, well, think about what the Haas's inherited back in 1980. You remember, Dale, it was the Oakland Mausoleum. That's how the media referred to it, the Mausoleum. So we had mummies then, and we have sewage now. The point is that the product on the field is great, and that's what fans are paying money to see. Unfortunately, the focus of ownership for the last 7 years has been to leave the market. And any time they have this kind of circumstance, here it's Roto-Rooter Gate over the last few months, that's what gets focused on. But I think Bob Melvin is really the true north in this, and he goes, hey, as long as it's not affecting the way we play, let's move on. Let's talk baseball. But how we were able to do it, again, goes back to the simple formula that everybody was part of the team. And in today's circumstance, because ownership has a business position clearly stated over and over, we're out of here as soon as we can be out of here, that has turned a lot of potential A's fans off. They're still rooting for the team. They're excited as heck. They love the personalities of this team, but they're not going to pay the money when they're told constantly, we're gone, and there's nothing that you can do to keep us here.
We have a question, Andy, for you via Twitter. John English is asking, Mr. Dolich, during the Haas era, were there infrastructure issue problems like today, sewage, etc.? Was a new ballpark talked about?
Yes, actually. We had talked about a ballpark across 880. So if we're kind of that Zone Technologies, which is empty right now, and I think it's Lexus of Oakland. We had talked about a building there. But we were able to do some things, as the fans know who've supported this team. We had kids' play areas. We had a picnic area, both in and outside the stadium. We just, instead of taking the position that it was terrible, we took the position, this is our home. We're proud of it. We think Oakland is a great market, a great sports market, a great baseball market, and we'll make it work. So you didn't hear a lot of whining. Tom Hanks said there's no crying in baseball, and we took the position, hey, we're happy here. We're drawing great crowds. We have spectacular fans, and we had basically grown a whole other generation. Remember, from 1975 through 1980, nobody was going to games. So if nobody was going to games, they weren't bringing anybody with them. So we lost all those young kids. If you go out in some parts of the East Bay now, San Ramon, Walnut Creek, you definitely see more Giants gear than you see A's gear. In the 80s and 90s, no way would that happen. I mean, we own that market.
And after Billy Ball, of course, Andy, in the mid-'80s brought in manager Steve Burrows, then Jackie Moore, and the A's had players like Mike Heath, Cliff Johnson, Bruce Bochy, Dave Kingman, and I remember Moose Haas, the starting pitcher.
Yeah, we had Mickey Klutz. You forgot Mickey Klutz.
Mickey Klutz, Rob Picholo. And it was during that time, Andy, some of the A's draft picks started to develop in the minor leagues. Terry Steinbach, Stan Javier. And in 1982, the A's drafted Jose Canseco in the 15th round out of Coral Park High in Miami. They drafted Mark McGwire, who was the 10th overall pick out of USC in 1984. By 1986, Jose and Mark were in the big leagues and later became one of the most popular home run tandems in all of baseball. And I think all of us still remember the infamous Bash Brothers poster. It's maybe still plastered on some of our walls. Talk about the Bash Brothers era of A's baseball, and what was your strategy in marketing those two?
Well, you're pretty close to that. Since the book you wrote, I still have on my wall, and I have a baseball that I'm looking at right now in my office, which is the 3 consecutive rookies of the year.
That's
Let's not forget Walter Weiss. And so, we talk about Moneyball, and I'll give Billy all the credit in the world, but Sandy Alderson, who was the GM at that time, we knew that we had to rebuild the minor league system. You had to have that foundation. And let's not lose sight of the fact that after Billy Ball, we were a pretty mediocre team in the mid-'80s. We were winning, 71, 72 games, but the crowds were still growing each and every year. And as they saw, and of course Ricky and Mike Norris and Dale Murphy and Tony Armis and guys, Dale Murphy, Dwayne Murphy, I'm thinking Atlanta. Guys became a part of the community. And it also helped that we had guys that grew up in the community, people that played for Berkovich Furniture. And so that was a key factor. And when they started to see what was coming out of the minor league system and the quality pitchers that we had, it all started working together. We actively sought the All-Star game in 1987 so that we could have a platform to show people where Oakland was coming from, what Oakland was trying to do, bringing people to the Paramount Theater. We had the world's largest fireworks show around Lake Merritt when we had the Circle of Life. So we were doing it on the field. We were doing it in the community. And then, we were able to have the benefit of, 3 consecutive World Series in 88, 89, and 90. And Dale, because you were probably there, some of our BPs had more people coming out to watch them than some of the regular season crowds that the A's have now.
I was there.
It was amazing, the power and the enthusiasm of these guys. And there's nothing better than seeing your player grow up, not necessarily coming from another team, but a homegrown talent. And boy, did we have a lot of it.
Then, of course, the A's go to the World Series in 88, 89, and 90, Andy. Let's talk about the 1990 season when the A's drew 2.9 million fans that year, the most single-season attendance in A's history. Sounds like the A's were at the peak of their popularity at that time. And talk about how the role of a radio flagship station, TV, and your relationship with the media played into all this?
Well, first and foremost, I'm still trying to figure out how we lost to Cincinnati in the World Series. You know, people ask all the time to a number of us who work for the team. So 3 consecutive World Series, which is, you know, incredible to experience. Would you have rather won 2 out of 3 beating the Dodgers and Cincinnati, or 1 out of 3 beating the Giants? And I never hesitate. I go, I'll take 89, baby, even with a tectonic plate shift. I'll take that one, especially since the Giants struggled until recently to get their own ring. And if you ask Tony La Russa today, you know, which one was probably the most frustrating, it was definitely 90, because I think we were so good as a baseball team, we might have been looking beyond as to where the parade should take place, and they took it to us. Your media partners are incredibly important. I mean, if you look at what the Giants have going and the great job that KNBR has done, but you know, when we had our flagship station KSFO, we were on Channel 5 locally. We moved around a little bit, but now you got Comcast, which has done a magnificent job in becoming the kind of visual home of sports in Northern California. But radio, the A's have moved around a lot. And I happen to believe that baseball has been, is, and always will be a radio sport. And how lucky we were to have Bill King and Lon Simmons and Ray Fosse, do our games both on radio and TV. That had a lot to do with the great success, and that goes back, to the early 80s with Roy Eisenhart making that decision, to put Lon and Bill together. I call them the human amphetamine and the human Librium. One of the great play-by-play and color combinations. And then Ray, who's been a constant positive voice for the A's, and all that coming together. But I'd love to see in the future, for the A's, to have a stronger media presence. And unfortunately, when you read about the A's today, there's some level of controversy, or debate, whether it happens to be about, backed up pipes, or whether it happens to be about backing up a moving truck at some point.
Absolutely, and who can forget? Many of us forget that Bill King is known for radio, but he was the TV voice. He did TV for the A's along with the late Bill Rigney.
Yeah, Rig, a baseball angel sent to earth. It just an unbelievable force of baseball knowledge. One story that I will never forget: when we were about to win the World Series at Candlestick, I was in a suite with Rig, and, he was pointing down to Walter Weiss, and Rig was crying, and he was an emotional Irishman. And I go, Rig, what are you crying about? He said, you see Walter down there, Walter Weiss, this is his first year, I think, and he's about to win a World Series. I've been in baseball for 56 years, and this is my first World Series victory.
Wow. Great
story. You never know.
All right. I have a question for you via Twitter from Frank Gomez. Andy, how do you think the A's handled advertising their product? In my opinion, according to Frank, they haven't done enough, but is this part of a larger plan?
I take it that he's talking about today, and I would agree. I would agree with him. When I was walking around the concourse last year, again in the midst of that incredible atmosphere during the playoffs, I was looking for signs. I was looking for tables. Buy your season tickets here. Get your playoff tickets. Here's information. I was looking for video board announcements. I was looking for full-page ads in the local newspapers. And quite frankly, I didn't see them. Whether it's a business plan not to promote, I don't know. I mean, the A's are on TV. They have multimedia. But that gigantic question mark that hangs over the Coliseum, which is where go the A's, is something that clearly, to me, has been the greatest negative effect on attendance. I mean, when Lou Wolf was quoted last week, I think, in USA Today, saying he was disappointed that more fans didn't show up, that just, to me, that was something that didn't make any sense. When you tell somebody, even though their product is great, it's like a restaurant that would tell somebody, well, I don't know when we're going to be open. We're probably going to move. I don't know what the specials are going to be. Well, they're going to stop coming to the restaurant, and that's what a lot of people have done. Actually, I would give a standing ovation right now to all the fans that are coming, that have stayed loyal, that are bringing their families out to the park, because it hasn't been easy for them, because they have to fight through that emotional fear that at some point their team might be playing in another city. And I don't think there's another city in the United States that's any better or could be any better than Oakland to support this team.
Speaking of another city, switching over to the A's current dilemma facing them. It's 2013, Andy, and I think all of us A's fans know the A's need a new ballpark. Nobody's saying the A's should stay in the Coliseum forever, though they will for another 5 years at least. A's fans deserve a new stadium. This franchise deserves a new stadium. At this point, Major League Baseball has not allowed the A's ownership to leave Oakland and move to San Jose, and I'm not sure the city of San Jose did themselves any favor by suing Major League Baseball. Do you see any momentum either way on the A's getting a new stadium anytime soon anywhere? And is the city of Oakland doing enough to keep their A's?
First and foremost, when you throw a federal court suit brushback pitch to Major League Baseball, not good. And when I hear Lou Wolf talk about the fact that they have a shovel-ready project at Girardon Station in San Jose, they might have a shovel-ready project, but they don't have a heavy equipment-ready project. They don't have a fully financed project. They don't even own all the land down there. They don't own all the EIR basic approvals. They don't own all of the political and legislative and community vote approvals. So I think a lot of that isn't factual. In terms of whether the city is doing enough, I mean, California and all of its cities have challenges today. But if you look just a bit north, where the mayor of Sacramento, a pretty good hooper in his own day, took a team that was gone. They were leaving. They were moving with an ownership that, similar to the A's, have said, we can't do it anymore in Sacramento. Now they have new ownership. They're on their way to building a new downtown park. Shaq is now a minority partner, a limited partner of the team as of yesterday or the day before. They're getting it done in so many ways. If you look at what the Giants did, where people thought it was impossible, AT&T is now, 13 years old as time flies. They built one of the most magnificent baseball parks in the country. And the same is possible in Oakland. I happen to believe that Oakland needs to focus, and the focus is not on Howard Terminal, which fans have heard about a lot. I believe the best location is right there at 66th Avenue. And it's not easy, but you give the football stadium back to the Raiders. It needs to be retrofitted. We won't get into the Raiders saying they need an absolutely brand new football stadium, but with retrofit, that can become a fine NFL stadium. And there's room on the Coliseum footprint, if you look at 880 in that kind of far right-hand corner, where all the bleachers are stuck and there's some office buildings and some other retail in there. You could build a quality baseball stadium right there. And everything that people talk about, it needs the views of the water, and it needs to have this and that. You've got all the environmental concerns taken care of at the Coliseum. B, you have the best transportation infrastructure in all of Northern California in terms of the roads, in terms of BART, in terms of the new airport connector, which will be finished soon. There is no better location than that place. You've got parking, and Oakland is growing. For all of its challenges, Oakland is the center, the geographical center of the Bay Area, and more people are moving to Oakland because it is affordable. I mean, the Bay Area is on a roll for technology, biochemistry, and Oakland is going to be the beneficiary. So as I look forward 3, 5, 7, and 10 years, I see a brand new baseball stadium there with attendance, at 2.5 million or above. But the real question is, when are we going to get past this logjam of this territorial dispute and current A's ownership business view of we're gone, there's nothing to talk about in Oakland.
So you see a future ballpark more likely to happen at the Coliseum grounds, the Coliseum City, over the Howard Terminal.
That's what I see, but, I'm just a guy that used to work for the A's, and that is, a business marketing consultant. And there are complicated issues. This is not simple. So the mayor, the city council, the county council, the Joint Powers Authority, they have a difficult circumstance, especially when they're dealing with an ownership that isn't talking to them. That is a quantum leap to get any of this done. I mean, I'd be totally in support of Howard Terminal if everyone, including Major League Baseball and A's ownership, believes that's the best location. But when, as you've talked about from the beginning, Dale, think about what we had. And I'm not just saying go back in history, but we played in the same Oakland Coliseum other than Mount Davis, which did take something away from the environment. But it was the same old structure. And people never complained about the environment because we did everything that we could to make it better, and that could happen today. If A's ownership later today, it's not going to happen, would say, we're committed to Oakland for the future, they'd sell 5,000 new season tickets in less than a month.
Andy, is it a matter of the city of Oakland proving to Major League Baseball that they've laid the groundwork for a new stadium, or proving to Lou and his son Keith Wolf and John Fisher that?
Well, you've touched on a really important point because the majority owner of this team, in the major majority, is John Fisher, who has taken a very low-key position and let Lou, as the managing general partner, be the spokesperson for the team. And Lou is a very knowledgeable, smart businessman who's done well over his life and has this as their business strategy. The complexity here, Dale, is you have multiple constituencies. And I don't mean to get overly complicated. You have the A's who own, the A's ownership. You have Major League Baseball. You have all the other owners. You have the city. You have the county. You have the JPA. You have the business community. And you have the most important constituency of all, which are A's fans, which you should never lose sight of. They're not on the same page. And you have the Giants, too, clearly, and the city of San Jose. You need the wisdom of Solomon to go in here and basically untie this Gordian knot. I look at it very simply, but unfortunately it's the most complicated part of the equation. If John Fisher and Lou Wolf and their other partners would reverse their position, they could have a new stadium built in Oakland. They choose not to do that. I don't think anybody else can force them to do that. And that's what's so frustrating.
And last Tuesday, Andy, the A's started selling ALDS postseason tickets, and the demand was so great they decided to take some of the tarps off the third deck to accommodate fans. To many A's fans, that really was a shot in the arm, and I really think in the back of their mind, A's fans wanted to show before a national audience and to this ownership to some degree that they can pack that stadium with 50,000 fans still. But that same day, as you mentioned earlier, A's co-owner Lou Wolf tells USA Today there's something wrong. There's something wrong here. You would think with our lead, people would want to come out. He later says, even if you're not a loyal fan, You would think this time of year, where teams are in the standings and where every game means something, people would come out. It's depressing. And he goes on to say more things about the customers. Was Wolf throwing out some intentional propaganda to a national newspaper, or is he disconnected with what's going on here?
Oh, I don't think he's disconnected at all. But I think it's part of a business plan, which, if I look at my history, is now going on 7 years. If you look at the Fremont attempt, which had some basis uh, of logic to it, but it didn't work because all the I's were not dotted and the T's were not crossed. And now we're going on, I think, year 5 in San Jose. When you have a 7-year business strategy of constructive eviction, that we're leaving, that there's nothing to talk about, the disappointment is really more on the A's fan base than it should be. The last thing that any owner should say at any time is that he's disappointed in his fan base.
That being said, it seems like the national media, Andy, seems to and even some local writers seem to be giving Lou Wolf and Fisher a big publicity push in their pursuit of San Jose. The A's aren't drawing. The area can't support a team. But same could be said, and you were there, in the 80s before the Haas family took over and the team eventually rejuvenated there. And you were a big part of how the fan base rejuvenated and got excited and eventually drew 3 million fans in 1990.
What has been done can be done again, and it's not that complicated. And without being too redundant, possession is 9/10 of the law. In this case, it's 10/10 because John Fisher is the majority owner of the team. Very few people, if anybody, has sat down with John Fisher. We don't know what he's thinking. We know what Lou is thinking because we know that Lou is saying it all the time. Now, is that exactly what John Fisher is thinking? I don't know. I'm not sure if the A's fans know. But clearly we've seen in the incredible environment that was created last year during the playoffs, and I would say the incredible environment that will be created here in this year's run to the playoffs. I mean, what is he going to do? Have the World Series parade in San Jose? I mean, I want to see where the parade route is because, unfortunately, we never had a parade in 1989 because we were recovering from the earthquake. So there was never an opportunity for fans to celebrate that great time in A's baseball. And I hope that all of these side issues get literally pushed to the side as the A's make their run to another World Series.
We've heard discussions about Don Knauss, COO of Clorox, making some noise and contending that if the A's current ownership is not committed to Oakland, he's confident they've identified a new ownership group who can buy the team and keep them. But is that all mute and useless unless Lou or John Fisher want to sell the team?
Well, you can't buy something unless somebody wants to sell it. I know that, having been through this for 42 years in the Big Four sports leagues. So, it's nice for, corporate leaders to stand in front of a microphone and say what they're going to do. The important point is that there are individuals that are more than capable of coming up with the money to buy this team. And hopefully there are individuals committed to a long-term future in Oakland because I think that is the only real future that this team needs.
Do you know of any new information with the Major League the Baseball Blue Ribbon Committee and what's going on and any new news about a new site and a new stadium for the A's?
Dale, I'd ask you, are you a Bill Murray fan?
I've heard of him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see Groundhog Day?
Yes, I did.
Well, for the listeners out there, the people that are listening, the way that I look at this right now, vis-a-vis the complexity now with the lawsuit of San Jose against Major League Baseball, this is Groundhog Day as it relates to the A's territorial circumstance. The two words that ownership hates in all of sport is deposition and testimony, which will be necessary if the court case moves to a higher level. B, there's much work to be done, if it can be done at all, by this ownership to actually build a new baseball stadium in San Jose. And let's not lose sight of the fact that you need private money and you need corporate support. The San Jose Sharks have done a magnificent job. The Niners are opening up their new stadium next year and have done a spectacular job in generating revenue from that marketplace. How much money is going to be left if, in fact, there were a new baseball park to go in 5 years from now, 7 years from now? So I believe that ultimately, since the A's are making money, which surprises many people because of revenue sharing, because of their payroll, because of the way Billy has been able to manage the cap in a brilliant fashion, that this could go on for a while, and that's frustrating. I mean, clearly, if current ownership would reverse their position and embrace Oakland, Oakland would embrace them. And if they're not willing to do that, then take your profits, which will be massive, put the team on the market, and let a group of like-minded people get this team refocused on Oakland, its great history, and the history that it's going to write in the next few decades.
Final thought, Andy, if you could finish this thought. The A's will stay in Oakland because
they have been, they are, and they will be in Oakland for a long time. Check the city that the playoffs will be in. It's going to say Oakland. They're going to be in this. They're going to be in this marketplace for a long time because there's no real alternative for them to go anyplace else. And what's most important, Dale and the listeners, there's absolutely no reason for them to leave Oakland.
That's Andy Dolich. I'm Dale Tafoya. Thanks for listening, A's fans. And Andy, I was excited to have you on the show, and you didn't disappoint.
Thanks, Dale, and go A's.